All right, everyone, welcome back. 20-minute sessions coming up next. And the first one is coming and is going to be with Rich Mulholland. He was a speaker in 2021. And yeah, for whoever was part of the first event, you know that his session was, as nowadays we like to say, fire. And I wouldn't expect anything else from his session today. Again, we are going to hear Rich for 15 minutes on a recording, and then he's going to be live with us for the Q&A part. I won't tell you what his topic is. Let's directly jump into what he prepared for us.
Hey everybody, my name is Rich Mulholland and I'm so excited to be with you today. It's my second chance to speak at this amazing event and it's such a privilege. Partially because I'm here with my people, with the presentation professionals. And I think the work and the job that we do is so fundamentally important. I can think of almost nothing of significance in business that doesn't happen on the other side of a human being delivering an amazing presentation. From that investor relations pitch to the great sales message to the CEO standing delivering their strategy to the entire team. It all happens when a great presentation occurs. I think what we do is so fundamentally important. And yet, I believe that the presentation industry is undervalued and underpaid. And I think the latter is because of the former. But we cannot blame our customers for this. No, it is all our fault. I think this is entirely our fault. And it's something that I want to challenge in this presentation here today. I think that there is a dragon that we need to slay that will collectively change the way the world thinks about presenting. And I want to talk a bit about that. Now, this idea of dragons, I started speaking about this actually last year when I was speaking at this very event. When I went to war with the concept of storytelling, everyone says, tell a story, but we don't need to tell stories. People don't care about our stories. What we have to do is sell humans new stories in which we play a part. We need to understand that they are the hero. But then when I thought about this as well, I decided that the world is obsessed with the hero, but the hero isn't the most important part of the story. You know, if it wasn't for Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker would still be farming moisture on Tatooine. So I wanted to write a book about the real hero, the real interesting person. And that book came out late last year. It's called Here Be Dragons. And it was about the idea that maybe the most important person in the entire story that we've not been thinking about enough is the dragon itself. And I know there are a lot of people who talk about the narrative of the villain and they go to war with them. You know, what is the bad thing? What is the threat? But I think the threat is one part of 3 dimensions that the dragon represents. In fact, the book is called Here Be Dragons because of those old maps that used to exist way back when that said Hic Draconis on them. And you've all seen them. They have those sea serpents and dragons. Why? Because they represent the lands we've never been to yet. We all know dragons exist, but we don't know where they are. So we've got to go and discover and, get glory and adventure from finding these things. So the dragon represents discovery and adventure and curiosity. That is one aspect of it. Another aspect is, of course, the threat. The dragon represents a challenge to the status quo, a challenge to an industry. You know, when Y2K software was a thing because Y2K bug threatened the technological infrastructure of the world at the time. However, dragons, of course, they can be threats, but they can also be opportunities. Because behind every single dragon is a cave full of treasure. And when we pass that perhaps sleeping dragon, it may not even be a threat. At the other side of that is the treasure that we can take home. Now, the reason I'm telling you this today is I do believe we need to have a dragon-style conversation about our industry. But I think that it checks all 3 of those boxes. I do believe that there is a threat to us, to the very, very value of the job that we offer. I believe that if we can fix that, there is an opportunity that exists in which we can all gain in a big, big way. And I believe that in order to get there, there will be discovery and adventure as we find new ways to service our customers in better, more interesting ways. But this all happens when we solve the first 2 quests of the storyteller. In the book, I talk about the 2 quests being quest number 2, that we need to help people slay their dragon. We want our customers standing on a stage, or your team if you're one of the customers, working internally. We want the speakers and presenters at those companies standing, delivering presentations that activate audiences. But this will only happen if job number one happens. And job number one is we need to make sure that they see their dragon. We need to make sure that they understand that the dragon in front of them is a big deal and that it's coming to get them. And I think this is where the presentation industry has failed. You see, I think we've spent far too much time slaying the wrong dragon. And I just want to say that I'm a very, very big part of that too. It started with the right intention, but I think I solved it the wrong way. Let me explain for you. So when I started my career, I actually used to tour with rock bands. I didn't own a presentation company. I was a lighting designer. I toured with bands like Bon Jovi, Def Leppard. I was even lucky enough to program the lights, the moving lights, for an Iron Maiden world tour. I loved making lighting things happen. It was an amazingly exciting thing for me to do. And then I entered a different world, the world of presentations. And I was coming in from the side of the lighting designer. But I would go into a room, and in rooms like this, people would stand presenting, not looking like this, but looking like this. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, good day to you and welcome. And I thought, you know what I can do? I can bring some rock and roll action to this. So I brought in the lighting, the sound, and the AV, and things were exciting for a bit, except that they weren't. Because if the presenter was bad, it didn't matter how much lighting we would give them. There was still a dull, bored audience standing in front of them. No. That was a problem. And it was a problem that I needed to fix. You see, I realized then that I was a cure for the wrong disease. You can't fix a bad steak with pretty garnish. You can't fix a bad presentation with lighting, sound, and AV. Well, let me tell you something, my friends. What I've realized 25 years into this thing is that nothing has changed. Where I may as well still be doing the lighting, sound, and AV for all the energy we spend on the wrong problem. Now, to illustrate this to you, I thought I would do it a little bit differently. When I was young, my parents went to a John Denver concert, and they showed us the video of his concert afterwards. And in that concert, he delivered like a 6-verse poem. And I wanted to share with you just 3 of those verses today, because I think that it's very, very relevant to what it is we want to talk about. So if you didn't expect poetry, well, that's what you're getting. Let's do this. 'Twas a dangerous cliff, as they freely confessed, though to walk near its edge was quite pleasant. But over that edge had slipped a duke, and it had fooled many a peasant. The people all said, something has to be done, but their projects did not at all tally. Some said, hey, let's build a fence at the top of the cliff. Others, an ambulance down in the valley. For the people are right if they're careful, they said, and if folks ever slipping or falling, it's not the slipping and falling that hurt you so much as the shock down below when you're stopping. And so over years as these mishaps occurred, quick forth did the rescuers sally to pick up the people that fell from the cliff in the ambulance down in the valley. Now, this story seems queer as I'm telling it here, though things doth occur which are stranger, more humane we assert to deal with the hurt than the plan of removing the danger. The best possible causes to safeguard the source and to attend to things rationally. Yes, build up the fence and let us dispense with that ambulance down in the valley. So, I think we need to have a new point of view around presenting, and we need to understand that there is a fence and that there is an ambulance. And the ambulance, my friends, is this obsession we have with slides and design, and we think we have a design problem. I think perhaps we do to some degree, and we certainly did for a long time. But I don't think that's going to change the world. And it's certainly not going to make people understand this as a significant part of a real problem they have to fix, because this feels like a soft skill. What we need to do is understand what the fence looks like. And the fence, my friends, is a well-written presentation. That's what we need to focus on. We need to be writing great presentations, because you write a presentation before you design it, before you deliver it. So I want to chat to you about the 3 problems, the presentation problems that we look at. And I want to tell you which one I think is the most important. Spoiler, it's possibly not the one you think. You see, the first thing is, I do not think presentations as a whole have a design problem. I think some presentations do, but I think that when you fix that problem, you've still not got all the way to the solution. You see, my friends, if you think analogously as a comic book, it doesn't matter how pretty the art is. If the story isn't good, well, then you're not going to move people's minds. We need to write good stories first. The way I like to explain it to people is imagine your presentation is a trip to a fancy restaurant. When you walk into that restaurant, there are two elements that you're going to decide how good your experience is. One is the meal, one is the service. Well, when it comes to presenting your meal, that's your message, right? That's the most important thing. The service, well, that's your deck. Now, if you have a really great meal and the service is okay, totally acceptable and visible, well, then it's still an incredible meal that you'll go home and tell your friends about. If, however, you have a terrible meal with absolutely amazing service, it's lipstick on a pig. It does not matter if the meal was terrible, because that's what you're paying for. This is the 80%. This is just the tip, the 20% on the top. Right? So we need to understand. And yes, don't get me wrong. I do believe that you can go to a restaurant, have an amazing meal, and have service that is so lousy that we have to fix it. So yes, we do need to make sure that they have good enough decks as a point of departure. But if we want to focus on building an amazing presentation, it needs to be more than that. And it's the more than that comes next, because a lot of people think, but that comes down to your skill as a presenter and as a speaker. But no, I don't think that delivery of your presentation is the real thing. I think it is important, and I think being able to deliver a message is critical as well. But we've all been at one of those family weddings where this one person, stands up and they're like, wah, 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 wah. They love the sound of their own voice. They're fantastic, but all it is hot air. A well-delivered message, presentations like this, they're just hot air. Like, nothing. We've got to decide to do things better than just that. And the way that I remember seeing this, my aha moment with this, was once I showed a presentation of Elon Musk to my team at Missing Link, and we were standing and they were going through it. I said, what do you think of this presentation? And they watched it, and at the end I asked them a bunch of questions, and basically the feedback was terrible, didn't know what he was doing, kept squirming, going through these things. And it really, you should watch this presentation. Wasn't great, except the final question I asked them was, hands up, who here does not want to buy his fancy new Powerwall? Silence. No hands went up. And by the way, that's a little tip for you. Always ask for the keep your hands down option, because people don't like putting their hands up. But no hands went up. Why? Because his presentation narrative was so well structured. So well structured that actually it got them there anyway. It was a bit awkward to watch, but the message was not lost on them. So how do we get people to care about the structure and the nerdy stuff inside, the less visual thing about a presentation? Well, this, my friends, is what I wish was the problem we had to solve, but it's not. Because there's a bigger problem that becomes before that. And that problem is the real problem we have in the presentation profession, and that is a desire problem. People don't want to get better at this. They think they're good enough. And we know this because presentation standards are still so low, and yet all the information is out there. Heck, I'm even adding to the noise myself with my book, Boredom Stare. BoredomStare.com. But I'm adding to the noise myself. It's not enough. If you want to learn to be a better presenter, there are TED Talks on it. There are courses you can go on. There are, lots and lots of things available to you. But most people are like, I've been presenting for years. I'm really good at this. They're confusing experience with skill. And I remembered understanding this when reading a book called Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer, where he spoke about a concept called the OK Plateau. Basically, what he said was when people start out trying to learn things, what they do is they're in a position of incompetence. But then they work at it, they realize, I'm not good at this. They work at it, and then they become competent. This area here is a safe space. It's kind of good enough. Then only a very select few are willing to take the steep journey up the other side to achieve mastery. That is, where the magic happens. But most of us in most areas are happy to stop and rest on the OK Plateau. And you know what? Most presenters would be totally fine to stop and rest on the OK Plateau if it wasn't for one critical fact. In the world of presentations, the OK Plateau is not okay. If, we gauged the good enough as a swimmer to enter a pool the same way we think that good enough as a presenter to get onto a stage, people would drown. Right? In the world of presentations, good enough isn't. The MVP, the minimum viable presentation, isn't minimum or viable enough. People are still bad at it. And it is our job as a profession to show people that. We need to make sure that they see that dragon. As long as they think that they're good enough, it is a critical flaw and a problem that's holding them back from success. But I think we can change it. But we need to first change our own mindsets, because let me tell you, as long as people think that this is a graphic design problem, they're not going to take it seriously enough. They need to see it as something bigger. Because I can tell you this, in the 25 years I've run my business, I've been in a lot of boardrooms, and you know who I do not see sitting around the big table in the boardroom? It's the designers, right? There isn't a seat at the table for them, but there is a seat for executives and strategists, and that's where we need to come in. I believe that we need to have a presentation revolution. I think that we need to change the world's relationship with presentations. We need to let them know that it's not good enough and get them there. I want you to join that revolution. I'm not 100% ready to reveal exactly how it looks, but I believe companies all over the world can work together to make it happen. I do believe that there's enough work for all of us. I see presentation as a cooperative game because, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, there are far too many bad audiences and not nearly enough of us who care about fixing them. So if you're interested to hear more, please go over there and join that mailing list, and I'll let you know when it happens. But in the meantime, there is one thing that we can do. And this is probably only relevant to some of you because I'm sure there's others who are already there. But I want you to go now straight away and to change the way that you see yourself. I want you to change your job title. If you go and look at yourself on LinkedIn and you look at how you presented yourself, if you see yourself as a presentation designer, I want you to change that straight away. I want you to change it to a presentation professional, because this is a profession of professionals and presentations matter. But the world will only start taking what we do seriously when we start taking what we do seriously ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it from me. I hope that you will join me in this presentation revolution.